Hey there, and welcome to Get Career Curious, the podcast that gives you the inside scoop on careers, what it takes to get there, and what the job is really like. I'm your host, Audrey Hollis. This week, we are talking with Lindsay Neufer, a lead data scientist at Booz Allen Hamilton, who breaks down what it really means to work in data science. Spoiler, it's not just crunching numbers in a dark room. From analyzing satellite data for the Department of Defense to teaching Space Force professionals about data governance, Lindsay's path is a mix of strategy, storytelling, and some seriously cool tech. She shares how curiosity, not coding, sparked her interest in this field, why communication skills are just as important as technical chops, and how she finds purpose in making complex data actionable and impactful. If you've ever wondered what is data science and could it be for me, this episode will give you the clarity and confidence to find out. Welcome, Lindsay. Welcome to the Get Career Curious podcast. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to talk with you today. So, Lindsay, imagine you're at a party and someone asks you what you do for work. How would you answer that?
Yeah, it's funny because I do get this question a lot out and about, and I think that sometimes I really answer it differently, like every time. But I would say what I generally do is I help government clients with their data. So one of the big things that kind of means right now is like everyone, is really excited about AI right now. And the government's no exception. And so everybody's worried about how we're going to do machine learning, how are we going to do all these different things. But the government stereotypically can be a little bit behind depending on who you're working with. And so something that I help them do is try to get their data up and running to a good point where they could be doing some more advanced AI techniques on it. So it's a lot of education and a lot of just helping clients kind of get off the ground with data and just meeting them wherever they are.
Yeah, that's amazing. I really enjoy hearing insight from you. Normally, when I tell people about my aspirations to becoming a data scientist, there's a large range of reactions because the field uses so much math, but I'm excited to learn from you. So first, did you always know you want to be a data scientist, or what first got you interested in this field?
No, I definitely did not know I always wanted to be a data scientist. So I would say my journey through college, I definitely changed my major a lot and didn't really know what I wanted to do. I originally started in college as an engineering major and kind of wasn't really sure about any of the different disciplines once I learned about them my freshman year. Then I decided, because of kind of an interest in math and statistics, to jump over to actuarial science, which, if you haven't heard about that, is also an interesting field to try to explain to people, but just a lot of math and a lot of exams. And so I tried that out, and that wasn't really a great fit either. I ended up in my undergrad with a degree called industrial management, which is kind of like supply chain, is like what it's called at a lot of schools. So kind of working in warehouses and dealing with different logistical problems that kind of they face. And I had an internship with Walmart while I was a supply chain major. And that internship was really interesting, but I think I just learned like I didn't really want to work in a warehouse environment. I wanted something kind of more corporate or more just traditional. And so it was kind of like, time to graduate and figure out what's next. And there's actually a new program at my business school where they had a master's in data science, because kind of at the time that I was in school, a lot of schools weren't doing undergrad degrees in data science yet. You could still get a degree in mathematics or statistics and break into the field, but there weren't a lot of undergrad programs yet. So I decided to do this 1-year master's program, really condensed, really fast paced. And I just knew that it was a huge and growing field. And I thought that would, again, be just like a good place to use my interest in like statistics and math and just helping different clients.
That's definitely a interesting way to get there for sure. So now that you have gotten into the workforce, what kind of jobs have you done since graduating college and getting your master's degree?
Yeah, so I graduated with my master's during 2020. So it was kind of like the peak, kind of the start of COVID. And kind of the guidance that I had gotten from my leadership when I was in school was, if you're looking for a job in data science and in this field, the jobs aren't really posted until they're looking to hire someone immediately. So it was kind of like, don't start applying until kind of the end of the year. And so like we get to like peak COVID starting and like nobody has a job. So it was obviously just like a really crazy time. But, my partner at the time had a job lined up in Colorado Springs. And so since he had a job lined up in this area in Colorado Springs, Colorado, I was like, okay, I'm going to try to find a job there. And I didn't know at the time that the whole economy, a lot of it is focused around military. So the first job that I was offered was at a small consulting company doing work primarily with the Space Force. While I was at that company, I really loved the culture. It was a really great place to work, and I love my coworkers. And I got to learn a lot about the Space Force kind of also when it was kind of starting up. And so I helped do things like create policy for the Space Force around data. And I built a relational database that helps people in the Space Force understand what data systems are around and what data is available to make decisions. So I did some different things like that, and it was really cool. So basically, after I was at this small company for a few years, government contracting is kind of crazy, projects kind of start up. And then sometimes you get to the end of the project and, the work is done. So there might not be a next position for you to easily roll into. So at that time, I decided to join a much larger firm. And both of those companies had pros and cons, like working for a small company versus working for a big company. The benefits are a lot better. And again, kind of those resources for once you get to like the end of a project and being able to get staffed on something next. Those are things that, are just better at a bigger company. So I've been at my current company for about 2 years now. Again, mostly working with people in the Space Force, and then done some Marine Corps work too as well. That's been exciting.
So, reflecting on your journey, what was the biggest turning point in your career?
When I was first entering the field and kind of when I was coming out of my master's, I hadn't realized initially how much of the role of a data scientist a lot of the time can include tons of coding. And so that was something that I didn't really see myself like wanting to do on a day-to-day basis on a job. And so I was trying to figure out how I could still be well compensated for the degree that I got and everything that I learned, but maybe not have as traditional as a role where I'm like using Python all the time and, just kind of like sitting at my computer alone. So I would say that was kind of why I wanted to join a company that was kind of oriented around consulting. That's another thing that I thought a lot about in college. Like I like the idea of working for a company where there's a lot of like team building, collaboration, and where you kind of get to do a new thing all the time. That is definitely one of my favorite parts about working in government contracting. It's like if I'm working on a project for a few months and it's not a great fit or, it's not super exciting, I know that there's always a new project around the corner that I can try to use different skills on.
Awesome. And could you take us through what your job looks like on a day-to-day basis? If that's like going in person, if that's remote, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I've certainly had projects where I've had to go in person, and I do think that's really valuable. But for the most part, my job, I do work from home a lot. A lot of my team is spread out geographically across the country. A lot of my coworkers, live in Washington, D.C., and sometimes my clients also are in a completely different location. So a day-to-day work day for me, right now I'm on two different projects. One of my projects here, I work on a small data team that kind of handles ad hoc tasks for one of the combatant commands nearby and just doing ad hoc tasks for them, creating dashboards, building data pipelines, whatever they need, and helping work with stakeholders to kind of figure out use cases and figure out requirements for what they need. And then my other project that I work on, that is one where my team is fully spread out. My clients are spread out, and we're helping them with kind of a wide range of data problems. So it could be like creating new KPIs for them, creating creating new processes for people to request access to data, things like that. So yeah, my days vary a lot, but again, that's what I like about it.
How often do you switch between projects? Is it normal for you to do two at a time?
Yeah, usually we definitely try to have people stay to just one project because it makes things a lot easier. It makes scheduling meetings easier, and it's a lot less overwhelming for the person doing it, especially for our new employees. We always have them just focus on one project at a time. Contracting is just like a crazy world. So sometimes you'll have a project that maybe goes for 2 or 3 years, but sometimes the funding dries up. So there'll be like a little bit of a gap for say like a month or two where you kind of need to figure out something else to stay busy. But I would say, yeah, most of the projects that I've been on, they usually last for about a year is probably the minimum, like a year or more.
Got it. And so, what are some of your likes and dislikes about being a data scientist, and what are some of the more challenging aspects that you face?
Yeah. One of the things that I really like about working in this field is it's kind of fun to be the person that kind of knows how to do things that other people in the room don't understand. So sometimes on a team, we usually have people that are from all different disciplines. So a lot of the time, I might be the only data scientist on the team. So it's fun to be able to explain things or bring up issues that arise, but you also have to be pretty confident to be able to stick up and say, like, hey, this is a problem, or we're going to run into this issue. So I really do like working, with other people. I would consider myself pretty extroverted as far as like traditional data scientist goes. So again, that's what drew me to consulting. But yeah, just working with stakeholders to figure out like what their needs are and helping us kind of explain things like, and I guess start to speak the same language again, like with the education that needs to take place with clients, sometimes it's just figuring out, they're going to explain their problem in one way, and I have to translate that into like, what does that mean for like our data or our data system, and how can we all get on the same page? I'd say kind of the most challenging part, at least for me, about being in this field is kind of how rapidly it's changing. I feel like I graduated like almost exactly 5 years ago. And I think obviously like this explosion with AI and everything, like there is just such a need to really keep your skills up to date if you are kind of somebody who's, building algorithms and doing really technical work. It feels like you have to keep up really with everything new that's happening. And another part that I think makes that really challenging is for data science. There's tons of like online courses and online learning materials out there. But I would say, like, from what I've seen, there's not really like one gold standard. So when people kind of ask me, oh, where should I go to learn more? There's not one company that I would point them to or like one learning platform because there's just so much out there and no one's really emerged as that authoritative kind of source for learning more. I think that's really challenging too.
How do you see AI advancements altering the role of data scientists, and how might AI increase or decrease the need for scientists in the future?
Yeah, I think the role of AI will be really interesting. I think in data science, it kind of mimics other fields where you might not need as many like entry level people. But one of the major skills that a data scientist really needs to have to also to be successful at all, but especially to stand out, is being able to explain things in a way that other human beings can understand. There's always going to be that need to break down like complex data findings and make it easy to understand how it affects the business and what are really like the long-term effects of that. These AI platforms can help a lot with like the coding, which is why some of those entry level like positions might go away just because people can kind of get things done just like a little bit faster, a little bit quicker. But the skills that you need to make a good looking dashboard, for example, and to take in like all kinds of user requirements and figure out how to make a solution that fits everybody's needs. I think those are things that we can't really automate. I don't see them automating those kinds of things.
Got it. Yeah, I was talking to some of the math advisors at my university, and they were saying that even with the computation of AI, humans will still need to be there to tell other humans like what that actually means and what that looks like for them as a company. What would you say are some misconceptions about data scientists? Like, what's some real truths about data scientists, and maybe what some personality traits that make a good data scientist?
One of the biggest misconceptions I think about data science is that the field has actually been around a lot longer than people think. People have been working in this field for a long time under different job titles, kind of like a statistician, or like they've been kind of hidden away in the IT department, or again, kind of hired in a position, kind of like a software developer or something. but they've really been working and using the same methods that we use, a lot of statistics and algorithm building. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, that this is like a super new field, which I think it's had a lot of growth and explosion recently, but the field itself and, the methods that we use are decades old and really tried and true. I think one thing that was really emphasized when I was in school was really kind of the teamwork environment too. I think for a lot of people that work in the data engineering kind of heavy side of data science and, are trying to build these predictive algorithms, you really are working with a team and kind of having to explain why you're making the decisions you're doing and why you think certain elements should be present in a solution. I think there is definitely a ton of teamwork that I think people that are more on that really, really technical side and like want to do the really technical things, like if you're not able to kind of communicate again, like why your ideas are important or, work together in a team, that could be something that catches people off guard.
Yes, I think I've heard a lot of where data scientists just kind of sit in a room and are doing coding or do a lot of remote jobs, but I'm happy to hear that you still talk to a lot of people and collaborate and do teamwork because that's something that I look forward to doing in a job. So how difficult would it be to transition into a different field of research from where you are now? Would you have to do different certifications or what would that look like?
Yeah, I think the industry I'm in right now, like politics aside, it's a really crazy time to be here. But I think one of the hardest things about data science as a field is like, if I were to make a career change, is I think right now it really is relevant to like almost every industry and every company, especially like all your Fortune 500, like, trying to just figure out whatever decisions their customers are making across any number of disciplines. I think that's the exciting part is that it's relevant in every industry. I think different industries emphasize different skill sets or different technologies, but yeah, I think it's definitely an easy time to make a transition just because I think there's definitely tons of hype around the career in general.
So when you're talking about different coding platforms and how you learn to use them, is it more, I learned it in college or I go sit and I teach myself in a different like environment, or is it more of a I need to go to school and get this type of degree? How important is that?
Yeah, I think coding skills, especially right now with the rise of AI, no one needs you to be, an expert right off the bat in something. And I know for me, if I don't use something a lot and I don't practice it, those skills kind of atrophy. So I think it's one of those things where when I was in school, everyone talked about like Python, R, and SQL were like the big three tools that like you needed to know how to use to get into this field. And depending on who you go work for, you know, maybe only one of those is relevant or maybe none of them are relevant. So I think it's the type of thing where if you understand the basics of really how to code and you can understand the logic, then, if you can get your foot in the door somewhere, you're going to be able to navigate pretty easily. And there's always other people on your team too. Like I said, I don't really like coding, but there's someone on my team that I've worked with on multiple projects that he's really good at it. So it's kind of like we kind of tag team where I can tackle others parts of the project. And not that I couldn't code whatever we're working on, but he's going to be able to do it much faster. And that's pretty important in the business world a lot. Doing things faster means we're doing them for cheaper. So that's always a good thing, no matter what company you're at.
Also, like when you were talking about entry level jobs, like to get off the ground, are you talking more like I need to have like a master's degree, like, and that'll kind of boost me, or more of like finding more internship level experience?
Yeah, I think internships are huge. I didn't realize, I guess like college goes so fast. I had a good internship like my junior going into senior year, which is kind of like when everybody has internships. But my sophomore year to my junior year, I would really try to get an internship then. I think that's where a lot of people like that summer just like slips away. And that's a summer where you could be getting really hands-on work experience. But I would say like I'd prioritize trying to get an internship then. And then I would say too, something that I didn't realize was like huge until it was too late is case competitions. that's a really good way to get hands-on experience. And that's probably something too that will be later on in your college career. But at my school, they'd have these case competitions where a company comes in, or some of them were virtual. One of the ones we did was with Adobe Analytics, which is their own platform, but they had an MLB data set, tons of baseball statistics. And they give you a data set and you have, say, 48 hours to work on it with a team of 4 to develop a solution and turn something in. That's something that when I was in undergrad, I had heard of them. I did not know what it meant. Like, I did not know the value of doing it. And when you do that too, you develop a relationship with these companies, like to get a job there too. They literally will have their head of recruiting be a judge. And you're like, oh, like that's obviously huge. Case competitions were, yeah, something that was not on my radar at all, but helps you get a lot of, both experience and connections, like networking. Feel like more colleges are doing this, but they weren't. Like my college did this when I was in school, but I don't think a lot of other colleges were. We had classes like you could take for a full semester where you would be like consulting with the company. And so that's another way to get like kind of that experience. Like I did a handful of those where one was only like 8 weeks, but we worked with the Indianapolis Colts for 8 weeks. And it was still kind of the case competition setup, but instead of a few days, you have 8 weeks to do this. And like, we're going to judge you at the end, like first, second, third place, whatever. So opportunities like that, where you can get no kidding experience with a company, with their data, with their people. I think those are just other ways to get that work experience while other people just don't even realize that that's an option.
So as we were talking about different skill sets and how, you've been working and collaborating with your own partners, how important is math and like being good at math or just being a hard worker? Is there something you need to be truly just talented at math or coding? Or is it more, like you said, flexible with, especially with the use of AI now? What would you say is the correct balance of those things?
Yeah, that's a really tough question. Yeah, I think my manager and I have had this discussion a lot lately where kind of as the field of data science grows and there's more and more job descriptions than ever and different roles within the field. But I think overall, like people over time and companies are trying to fit like more and more under that data scientist job description. Sometimes like you're expected to do so many different things. But I think as long as your technical skills are good enough, again, to kind of get in the door at some company, the biggest, most important things are always going to be like, how can you really convey the impact of whatever results you're finding? How can you effectively communicate it to the leaders that matter and that are making the important decisions? And also just building trust with the leaders that you're presenting your findings to, because if they can't trust you enough to understand like how you got to a specific solution, then they're not going to use that solution. And, the solution kind of just like dies on the vine. Yeah. Bringing it back to the technical skills, that's again something where, there's going to be times where you use more or less of those technical skills, but you can always brush those up, and companies are really expecting people to be like lifelong learners, because it's kind of a cliche at this point, but data science isn't the only field where things are changing really rapidly. The things you learn in school now, no matter what field you're in, what's important in your field is going to change in the next 10 years. Understanding and being willing like to recognize if you have a task and you really need to brush up on a particular technical skill, just taking the initiative to do that and do it when it really matters. Like do it at the time again that you're using that skill, and recognizing that you're probably going to have to keep studying and keep making sure your skills don't atrophy.
And when you talk about presentations and like presenting to these large companies, what does that look like? How would you go about, starting that process of showing them your data?
I meet with my clients pretty regularly. So even if I'm not ready to show them the huge final solution, sometimes it's good to just present a small part to get them really excited. So I'll give them a little breadcrumb of like one of our findings that was really positive. And so then they get to the point where they can't wait to hear the next brief. And that makes our company look really good. That makes our team look really good. And it makes the client want us to come back and to keep working with us. But yeah, a lot of the time I'm presenting virtually, but there are times where we do travel out to our client locations, sometimes a few times a year. When we fly out to our client locations, a lot of the time we're also doing workshops and doing really interactive things with them that involve more than just presenting. It's really a different skill set of facilitating and trying to get information out of them to understand and make sure that whatever solution we're building is meeting everything that they need. It's making sure everyone's voice in the room gets heard. It's making sure everyone's like following along and understanding what we're talking about, like no one feels lost. It's keeping attention of a room after, a long day or a long couple of days. So there's a lot of these other skills that, again, you can always get better at. And I think those days and those workshops and those presentations are always really fun because, again, that's when we get to either celebrate successes or, understand ways to improve and understand, what our next project is going to be to help them improve.
Okay, great. So if you could do it all over again, would you still choose this career path given all of the advancements of specifically AI and how that's moving forward in the future?
I think if I had to start all over, I would definitely still pick this field. I think it's still a really exciting time to be in this field. It's a good field to have good job security. Every industry, every company can benefit from data science. And there's still a lot of hype around it, but good hype, hype that has like meaning behind it, I guess I would say. Um, and I think the skills that are necessary in the field are really fun. And yeah, like I said earlier, I think it's really fun to be kind of the person in the room that can explain the really tough stuff and understand things that might go over other people's heads. I think that's just kind of fun to me.
I I can understand. I think that'd be a lot of fun to honestly be able to be the one that kind of makes that differentiation for others can be tasking, but also can be really rewarding. Also, being a female data scientist, is there anything you would say you kind of face challenges in that sense? Like, how does that look like gender specifically?
Yeah, I would say my company has a lot of resources for kind of women that are in these really tech heavy fields. I would say I'm not sure the exact breakdown at my company, but I think women, like across any company, are still kind of a minority in this field. I don't know if there's any specific challenges that I face. I think I've been really lucky that the culture at, the companies that I've worked at has been really positive where like, my gender is like not caused me any particular issues. I know that like at some of the bigger tech companies that is a bigger issue, but I think being confident in your skills and being able to communicate your results and, always come up with some evidence of why kind of your point is correct, I think is always just like a good hedge against any problems related to, kind of being one of the only women or the only woman in the room.
Well, that's good. I think women in STEM is always something that, we're taught to think is more of a minority, but as we get in the future, I think especially more women are growing and becoming a more even playing field. So, what's the best career insight you would like to share with our listeners? If that's interviewing process, if that's just careers in general, education, what would you like to share?
Yeah, I think something that I learned in between the time that I was kind of at my first company and at my second company is I think it's always good when you're kind of the new person to volunteer a lot. And every time somebody is asking for help with a certain task, to kind of be the person to raise your hand. It's a really good opportunity to just always learn new skills and learn about different parts of the business that you're in. But at the same time, I think I got into a situation at my previous company where I was volunteering for everything and I was getting kind of overwhelmed and kind of starting to resent all the different things that I had to juggle and all the different priorities. And, I ended up leaving that company for other reasons. But I think when I came into the second company that I've been with, that was something that I really wanted to be intentional about was still being able to volunteer and take on those opportunities to help myself stand out as a new employee, but also managing, my own interests and my own work-life balance and my own career goals. Because sometimes the things that people need volunteers for are not directly related to your work. Depending on your work environment, it might be organizing social events. And, speaking of being a woman in this field, I think that is somewhere where, like a lot of the work still does fall back on women, depending again on the culture of your company. Like women kind of take on these extra roles involving just like different things to boost the culture of the workplace. So just making sure that once you volunteer for something, remembering that you don't have to help contribute to that line of effort forever. Obviously, if it's something that, is aligned with your job, it's different. Your companies have like kind of similar extracurriculars to your school. So just trying to figure out a good balance, helping yourself stand out, but making sure you're not getting in over your head so much that, it's messing with your own mental health, even if you're getting all your work done.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you being here, and I've thoroughly enjoyed talking with you and learning about what it means to be a data scientist.
Yeah, thank you. It's really fun.
Thank you for joining us today. Our goal is to help listeners discover meaningful careers that bring them joy and purpose. Before we go, here are 3 takeaways from my conversation with Lindsay Neufer. First, data science isn't just about numbers, it's about solving real-world problems. Whether it's space defense or public health, Lindsay showed us how data can be used to make decisions that actually matter. Second, you don't need to be a coding genius to start. What Lindsay leaned into early on was curiosity, communication, and a willingness to keep learning. Those soft skills are often the differentiator. Third, there is power in building bridges. Lindsay thrives at the intersection of people and data, translating technical insights for non-technical teams. If you like connecting the dots between information and action, this career might be a perfect fit. If you have a friend who might benefit from today's discussion, please share this episode with them. Want even more career insights, like salary ranges for the jobs we discuss, lists of the hottest growing careers, and insights on internships? Join our community at getcareercurious.com for exclusive content and behind-the-scenes access of this podcast that you won't find anywhere else. We are on all major social platforms. Thank you again for joining me, Audrey Hollis, in this episode of Get Career Curious. I'll see you next time.